Hey, I'm Jem, and after more than 300 discovery calls across agencies, SaaS, and service based businesses, I noticed something wild. No matter the niche, the same psychological patterns kept showing up in how real time buyers decide. And once I understood those patterns, calls became calmer and clearer. And honestly, they converted better without feeling pushy. So, in this video, I'll break down those psychological steps and triggers for you one by one. So, here's the game plan for today. See. All right, there we go. How much you should talk versus listen, and the exact question flow that gets buyers to open up. How to create curiosity on the call so prospects lean and in to like what you say instead of just checking out and going somewhere else. The right way to handle pricing without breaking trust. How to reduce friction and decision fatigue so buyers say yes faster. Which persuasion cues actually matter in 2025, and how to end the call with a next step that actually sticks. Quick heads up before we start, if you'd rather skip the learning curve and just get qualified leads delivered straight to your inbox, I offer both done for you lead delivery and managed lead gen. Reach out and I'll show you some sample leads for your exact niche. All right, let's dive in. And we're starting with something that changes your results without changing your offer at all. Talk less, learn more, the discovery ratio that wins. Here's what most people get wrong. They think selling means talking more, but the data says the opposite. After analyzing thousands of sales calls, Gong.io found that teams who talk less, around 43% talk to 57% listen, actually close more deals. And when reps talk more than 65% of the time, follow-ups drop, win rates fall, and the call starts to feel like a presentation instead of a conversation. And here's the kicker, using slide decks during discovery also correlates with lower success. Why? Because slides push you into monologue mode like this. I use slides, but this is not a sales call. The buyer stops thinking, they start, they just, they just think and they just start waiting. Think of it like this, discovery isn't about impressing them, it's about understanding them. When you talk too much, you're collecting surface level info. When you listen well, you uncover buying criteria, the stuff they don't say up front. So here's how to apply it on your next call. Open with context, not a pitch. Instead of diving straight into what you do, start by showing you understand their world. Say something like, so you run a Dallas based HVAC company and summer season is your make or break, right? What are you trying to change in the next 90 days? That kind of question tells them you get me and it opens them up right away. Number two, use layered questions. Start wide, then narrow down. What's the main business goal right now? What's your current process for getting there? What's the bottleneck? And personally, what would a win look like for you? You're mapping impact, not just features. Number three, mirror and label. When they say we're frustrated with low quality leads, you can respond with low quality leads and pause. Then label what they're feeling. Sounds like you've been burned before. Boom. Then they start talking more because they feel understood. It's classic. This is like a classic negotiation psychology, mirroring and labeling lower defenses and creating trust instantly. Number four, shut the laptop. No slides, no fancy decks. Keep it human, conversational, and buyer led. Remember, the goal of discovery isn't to pitch, it's to understand their problem deeply enough so that your solution feels inevitable. It feels like the natural next step after they lay out their problems. All right, so once you've opened up that space and got them talking, the next step is to keep their brain engaged. Because if you've ever felt a call start strong but then die halfway through, that's usually not about your offer, it's about psychology. So let's talk about that spark, the moment when the buyer leans in instead of tuning out. Create an information gap so they lean in. All right, so once you got the buyer talking, once they're opening up, the next question is, how do I keep them engaged? Because you know, the moment mid call, it's mid call and things start to really fade. They were excited 5 minutes ago and now they're just giving you short answers, checking Slack, or just zoning out or like checking their phone. That's not because your offer isn't good, it's because their brain isn't curious anymore. The psychology behind this. Here's where there's like a theory, it's called the Lowenstein's information gap theory, and I think it's really useful here. So basically, the human brain hates an unfinished story. When we realize there's something we don't know, especially if it feels relevant to us, our brain lights up. Carnegie, Carnegie Mellon's research on curiosity confirmed this. When people sense a gap between what they know and what they could know, their dopamine spikes. Curiosity literally puts attention towards the missing piece. So if you can't create that tiny unresolved gap on your calls, the what does he mean by that moment, your prospects naturally lean in. You don't have to convince them. They just want to know more. Let's make that practical here. All right, how to apply these in discovery calls. Tease the missing puzzle piece. Don't dump everything. Here's what most reps do. Prospect says we're struggling with conversion, and they immediately go, "Oh, we can fix that. We can optimize your funnels, improve your checkout process, use dynamic landing pages." Boom, curiosity gone. You gave them the whole answer before they even wanted it. Instead, tease the missing piece. Drop a hint, not a whole playbook. Example, if you're talking to a US e-commerce brand, say you already have traffic and a solid average order value. You're missing one lever, and the most Shopify stores under 5 million completely overlook. You want to see where it usually hides? Now they're like, wait, what lever? What are we missing? And that's the hook. Their brain can't ignore it. You've turned the conversation into a mystery and they need the next cue. Number 2, use a before after bridge question. Instead of telling them how you'll fix it, get them to imagine the outcome gap. Try this. Right now, your average show rate is 46%. If that were 65%, where would you redeploy that extra revenue? The bridge is just a small process change. Notice what happens here? You've created a mini information gap and tied it to money. Now they're picturing the upside and they're curious about the bridge. That bridge is your offer, but you don't reveal it yet. You keep a little mystery here. Number 3, show one metric, hold the playbook for later in the call. Let's say you're talking to a brand struggling with lead conversion. Instead of explaining every tactic, say brands with fewer than 3 lead magnets convert about 28% worse than those with exactly 2 really strong ones. I can show you the 2 that usually win in apparel. You gave them a fact, proof, but not the formula, solution. That's how you keep curiosity alive. Now they're thinking, what are those 2 lead magnets? And you've earned permission to keep going deeper later in the call when you reveal your process. Why does this work so well? When you create that information gap, you're not manipulating, you're guiding their attention. You're saying, hey, there's something important you don't know yet, but it's worth knowing. And psychologically, curiosity is way more powerful than pressure. When someone feels curious, their brain is in exploration mode, not defense mode. And that's the exact state you want a buyer to be before you even talk price. And speaking of price, once they're leaning in, once they want to know more, that's when the next landmine shows up. You guessed it, pricing. Let's talk about how to handle it without triggering that, oh no, here comes the pitch moment, because price doesn't have to kill trust if you anchor it right. They're leaning in. The next landmine is price. Let's diffuse it right away. Point 3 is talk price early, anchor it right. All right, let's talk about the part that everyone secretly dreads, pricing. You know that moment on a call when the buyer says, so what does this cost? And you feel that tiny jolt of panic. I don't want to scare him off yet. Yeah, I've been there too. It's not that bad. Early in my career, I used to dodge it. I'd say things like, let's talk about that once you understand your needs a little better. Sound familiar? That's just not good. But here's the funny thing. Once I started talking about price earlier, my close rates went up. I'd just be straight up about this. This psychology behind it. Let's talk about it. Here's why it's called the anchoring effect. It's a concept from behavioral economics that says the first number someone hears sets the reference point for everything after it. So when you bring up price first, confidently, clearly, you're actually taking control of the frame. You're helping the buyer's brain calibrate what's normal before they make their own assumptions. And the data backs this up. Teams that discuss pricing on the first call see significantly higher win rates than teams that wait. You don't have to do some jujitsu here. Because waiting doesn't build suspense, it builds anxiety. When you avoid talking about price, buyers start guessing. And when people guess, they almost imagine a number that's higher than reality. So how do you talk about price early without sounding salesy or desperate? Here's how I do it, and it just works across service businesses, SaaS, or agencies. Give a clear range Then tie it to outcomes. Don't just drop a random number, frame it like a business conversation, not a cost conversation. For example, if I'm talking to a US home services client, I might say most of our clients in your space invest around $2,000 to $4,000 per month. Where you land in that range depends on two things: your zip code targeting and how fast you want to see results. The way I see it, if we can replace just two low margin jobs a day with higher ticket installs, this pays for itself in under 30 days. See what happened there? I didn't just give a number, I gave context and logic. The focus isn't on cost, it's on ROI and outcomes. You're showing them that price isn't a random expense, it's a lever that moves their business forward. That's called value anchoring. It links your price to gain, not pain. Now, step number two here: never anchor to discounts, anchor to value, risk, and cost of delay. Here's a mistake I see a lot of reps make. They lead with discount. If you sign today, we can knock off 10%, but that immediately shifts the frame from value to price. You're now you just told their brain we're negotiable or flexible, you can push. Instead, anchor to value, risk, or the cost of delay. Try this instead. If we start next week, you'll get the early season ad rates before they go up. Waiting another month means paying more per click and missing a key window. Now, the anchor is not cheaper price, it's opportunity cost. You're positioning the investment as smart timing, not a bargain hunt. People don't want the cheapest, they want the smartest decision. Step three: invite collaboration. Make pricing a two-way street. Once you've shared your range and anchored to value, open the floor. Instead of defensively asking, does that work for you? Try, given that range, what constraints should I know about? That is perfect. That line changes everything. You're not begging for approval, you're collaborating. It makes them feel like you're on the same side of the table. You're solving a problem together. Now, you're not a salesperson anymore. You're a partner helping them design a smart plan. A bonus here is emotional frame. This is very important. Here's the deeper reason why this works. When you bring up price early, confidently and calmly, you subconsciously send this message: I'm not nervous about the value we bring. And humans pick up on that energy fast. Buyers can feel when you're comfortable, and comfort builds trust faster than any clever script. So, yeah, talk about price early, set the frame, tie it to results, and make it collaborative. Talk about their current situation and how they can manage that price. Because when you own the price conversation, you own the frame of the deal. Now, even when you got the right price anchor, you'll still notice something weird sometimes. People stall. They'll say things like, this happens to me so much. Yeah, this sounds great. Let me think about it. Let me let you know in a week. Let me let you know in 2 weeks. Let me let you know on Friday. Let me talk to this person. That's not always doubt about you. That's how the human brain weighs losses and choices. So let's talk about how to reduce that friction and how a few psychological tweaks can make yes feel like the next natural step. Even with the right price anchor, people stall. That's not always doubt about you. It's the way humans weigh, choices. So let's talk about that. Reduce friction, loss aversion, ownership, and fewer choices. All right, so by now you've done a lot, right? You got them talking, you sparked curiosity, you handled pricing with confidence. But here's where a ton of deals quietly die: the friction stage. You know that moment when someone says, yeah, this all sounds good, I just need to think about it. Oh, I love this part. And you're sitting there like, what's left to think about? I just went through the whole thing. That hesitation isn't always about you. It's about how the human brain handles decisions. And I'm going to talk about the psychology behind this. There are three big psychological principles you need to know here. And if you understand them, you can literally feel calls get smoother. Number one, loss aversion. People hate losing more than they love winning. This is so true. So this one comes straight out of the prospect theory, developed by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, both absolute legends in behavioral economics. And I love using these examples here because behavioral economics lets you understand the world in a much broader lens and very technical. Basically, humans feel losses twice as intensely as equivalent gains. That's why you'll save $100 doesn't hit as hard as you're losing $100 every week you wait. MIT's research and tons of behavioral studies confirmed that people will act faster to avoid a loss than to chase a gain. So on your discovery calls and follow-ups, you need to frame the cost of an action clearly, calmly, and specifically. Example, let's say you're talking to a Phoenix-based roofing company. Every week your team runs out of Google local leads by Wednesday. That's roughly 8 missed inspections a week. Even if you only close 30% of those, that's 2 jobs gone every single week. You're not fear mongering, you're showing the reality of inaction. You reframe their decision from should I spend money to how much money am I losing by waiting. That's a massive mental shift. Number two, the endowment effect, the power of ownership. Here's another one from behavioral psychology, the endowment effect. It basically says once someone feels like something is theirs, they value it more. And this isn't just theory, it's been replicated everywhere from MIT to different case studies. In one famous example, people were giving free coffee mugs. This one's great. When asked how they'd sell them and how much they'd sell them for, they priced them way higher than they would have paid to buy the exact same mug 5 minutes earlier. Why? Because once it's mine, it's emotionally anchored. So, how to use that in sales? You create a taste of ownership, something that feels like it's already theirs before they fully commit. That might be offering a free pilot list, geologged for 7 days, or a cancel anytime first month. They can step in without feeling trapped. That small sense of this is already mine flips the buyer's mindset from evaluating to protecting what's theirs already. And when people feel ownership, they naturally want to keep it. So number three is fewer choices, the JAM study effect. All right, this one is a classic. You've probably heard of the JAM study from Columbia and the University of Washington. It's famous in marketing circles. Researchers set up a grocery store booth offering samples of jams. When they offered 24 flavors, tons of people stopped by, but hardly anyone bought. They offered just 6 flavors, limiting the selection. Sales skyrocketed by 10. Why? Because too many options create decision paralysis, and we see this today as well. The human brain only likes about 2 to 3 choices max before it starts freezing. So on your calls, and especially in your proposals, don't throw 5 pitch pricing tiers at them. Don't say we have bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and enterprise. That sounds like a restaurant menu, not a confident offer. Instead, simplify it like, say something like, we've got 2 clear paths for you: starter, which gets you rolling fast, and growth, which scales results once the system's proven. And that's it, 2 choices. It feels simple, safe, and manageable. They can see themselves in one of, if they can see themselves in one of the 2 options, they won't be overthinking. Like if there's like 5 options that different tier packages are, just give them like 2 to 3 options. What is the bigger picture here? At the end of the day, reducing friction isn't about tricking people. Definitely not. It's about removing the mental clutter that slows down good decisions, because people don't really like, they need a little push sometimes if they really need this. It's for their best interest. Frame the cost of waiting so they feel the real urgency. Give them a safe taste of ownership so it feels personal. Simplify choices so their brain can't breathe. When you do that, the let me think about it moment starts disappearing, and you will notice this. You're not pushing harder, you're just making saying yes feel more natural. All right, so now we got curiosity, trust, value, and momentum. But before you wrap the call, there's one more layer, which is a bit of persuasion, and not in a bad way. This is not the old school say their name 3 times and mirror their posture kind of persuasion. I'm talking about the cues that still work in 2025, the ones backed by research that build connection, real connection instead of fake pressure. Let's talk about those next. Now that friction is down, a few persuasion cues still matter, but only if you use them honestly. And please use it honestly. Use the persuasion cues that still work. All right? Let's talk about them. So by now, you've done all the heavy lifting. You got the buyer talking, you sparked curiosity, you handled pricing early and clearly, and you smoothed out all friction. Now, we're at the final 10% of the call, the part where subtle persuasion makes a big difference. And look, I'm not talking about manipulation or cheap sales tricks. I'm talking about science-based, human-centered persuasion, the kind that works because it's true, not because it's sneaky. The psychology behind this. This comes straight from Robert Cialdini, the godfather of persuasion psychology. His research from Influence at Work identified 7 timeless principles. Social proof: people follow others like them. Authority: people trust credible experts. Reciprocity: people naturally give back when they're given value first. Consistency: commitment. Once people say yes to something small, they want to stay consistent with that choice. Liking. People say yes to people they genuinely like. Scarcity. People value what feels limited. Unity. People align with those who feel like part of their tribe. Now, all of those still work, but in B2B and lead gen calls, there are two that stand out above the rest: social proof and consistency. Let's talk about how to actually use them ethically, conversationally, and without sounding like a brochure. Social proof. Show, don't tell. Here's the thing: when buyers don't trust you yet, they'll borrow trust from other people like them. It's human nature. We look to others for validation, especially when we're uncertain. So, if you're talking to a US business owner, use geography and industry to make your proof relatable. Here's how I do it. Here are three US case studies: a Miami med spa, a Rayleigh flooring company, and a Denver logistics broker. Two of those were actually referrals from the third. That line does a lot in one breath. You're showing social proof without bragging. You're naming relatable businesses and you're casually implying client satisfaction since referrals happened. And if you want to take it further, you can say the Miami Med Spa had the same issue you mentioned. They were getting traffic, but not enough bookings. We fixed that in week two. Boom. You just painted a mini success story that mirrors their pain point. That's not persuasion. That's reassurance through relevance. You got to connect the dots here. You got to make sure people are confident enough to buy from you, and you got to show them proof, obviously. Number two, commitment and consistency, the foot in the door effect. This one's fun and it's backed by decades of psychological research, including the classic Friedman and Fraser 1966 study. They found that when people said yes to a small request, they were four times more likely to say yes to a bigger one later. Why? Because of consistency bias. We humans like to see ourselves as consistent. Once we take a small step, we subconsciously want to stay in line with that self-image. So in discovery calls, your goal is to get that first small yes. It could be as simple as, would you be open to a quick 5-minute data check? I'll run your numbers through our system and show you what your real open rate or CPL should be. Or what if we pilot just one zip code for 10 days? No full commitment yet, just to see the data. That's your foot in the door. And once they say yes to something low risk and logical, their brain starts framing you as a partner, not a vendor. And once that psychological switch flips, the bigger yes, the full deal feels like a natural continuation, not a new decision. Reciprocity. This is number two. You got to give before you ask. Here's one that's that's as old as human nature itself. When someone gives you something valuable, you feel an urge to return the favor. That's reciprocity. But the key is not to make it gimmicky. People can smell fake generosity a mile away. So instead of sending vague free audits or cookie cutter PDFs, give something personal and specific that proves you actually did your homework. For example, hey, before our call, I took 5 minutes and recorded a quick loom going through your ad sets and Google listings. There are two areas that can easily double your reach this month, and let's go through them. That short gesture accomplishes three things at once. It builds trust, it shows competence, and it makes the buyer feel like they owe you a real conversation. And that's the ethical form of reciprocity, genuine effort that deserves attention. Now, I have a bonus here, which is the unspoken cues. Beyond those three heavy lifter, a few smaller persuasion cues still quietly shape your call energy. Liking. People buy from people they enjoy talking to. Be relatable, human, and grounded, not robotic. Authority. Subtle proof signals. We helped 120 plus US companies in the home services niche. Builds confidence fast. Scarcity. Don't fake it, but it's okay. We only onboard 2 new clients per region to avoid overlap. That's credibility through boundaries. Unity. Use we language. Let's map this out together. It turns the call into a teamwork, not tension. So yeah, persuasion isn't about slick talk or fancy words. It's about giving the brain what it already wants: proof, consistency, and trust. You're not pushing people, you're helping them feel confident saying yes. All right. So now you've done the full loop. You've asked the right questions, handled price, reduced friction, and used persuasion the right way. The only thing left here is momentum, because even if the call goes great, if you ended with, I'll send you an email, you're probably dead in the water. So let's fix that. You've asked good questions, handled price, reduced friction, and used the right cues. Now let's talk about how to lock in that momentum and leave every call with a next step that actually sticks. So much This happened to me so much. So I hope you guys learn from this. All right. So let's say you've crushed the discovery part. They've opened up. You've handled price. You've removed friction. They're nodding. They're bought in. But here's the trap. And I see this all the time. You end the call with, cool, I'll send you over some info and we'll take it from there. And you feel like it went great. But a few days later, they've gone quiet. They ghost you because they weren't interested. That like not this is not because they weren't interested, but because the next step wasn't clear or easy. This is where deals die, not on the call, but in the confusion after it. This is the psychology behind it. Two big science-backed ideas are people follow through more when the next action is simple, visible, and pre-scheduled. Reducing cognitive load, mental effort increases completion rates, whether it's filling a form, checking out online, or scheduling something. According to usability research from Nielsen Norman Group, one of the top authorities in user experience, structure, clarity, and visible next steps drastically reduce decision fatigue. And when mental effort goes down, the fall rate goes up. That's why in your post-call plan, you want to create a path that's one link, one form, one time slot. That's it. Clean, simple, friction-free. Because people don't want to think. They want to move forward easily. So how do you do that in real life? Here's the structure that I use at the end of every good discovery call. Confirm the goal in their words. Before you talk about the next steps, lock in alignment. Make sure you're both chasing the same target. You can say something like, so just to make sure I got this right, your goal is to generate around 30 qualified roofing leads per month in Travis County, right? Mostly to smooth out the seasonality between spring and fall. That one sentence does three powerful things. It makes them feel heard, it confirms you understand their world, and it primes their brain for action because you've restated the destination. When people see their own goal reflected back, they feel ownership over the outcome. No, it's not your pitch, it's their mission. Step 2, propose one simple scheduled step. Here's where most people they just overcomplicate stuff here. They say, I'll send some options and you can pick a time. Nope, that's too much thinking, too many micro decisions. Instead, you take the lead. Here's what I'll do. I'll send over 2 sample leads from Round Rock and Jacksonville in the next 2 hours. And let's set Thursday at 10 a.m. Central to debrief results. I'll drop the calendar invite right now. So what happened there? You're doing 3 psychological things. You're creating a clear deliverable, which is the sample leads, setting a specific visible next action, which is the debrief, locking it in time on the spot. That's how you keep momentum alive. There's no follow-up fatigue later because the next move was already locked in their brain and on their calendar. Step 3, offload the work. Now, once they've agreed, make it brainless as possible for them to complete. Remember, the more clicks, forms, or decisions they face, the more likely they are to drop off. So make it ridiculously easy. 1-page agreement, 1 payment field, no extra steps, pre-filled details. They just check and sign. Calendar invite already attached. You're basically saying all you have to do is show up. And when you do that, the brain relaxes. Low friction feels like progress, and progress feels like success. When you make the next step that easy, your close rates go up without needing any pressure. Because what you've really done is this: you've removed the last layer of uncertainty when you have clear processes that are idiot proof. And uncertainty is what kills decisions. So just don't end calls, land them. Very smooth, like landing a plane. You just gotta land them with one clear goal, one next step, and one easy way forward. Nothing complicated, no 10-page documents, no contracts built by a million. Like, just keep it simple. One page, and one link. Let's bring this home. All right, let's wrap this up. Here's the full blueprint we just covered, and I'm going to go through it again. Keep the 40 to 60 discovery ratio and ditch the slides. Your buyers should be doing most of the talking. Spark curiosity with information gaps so they pull the conversation forward. Bring price up early and anchor it to outcomes, not discounts. Frame the cost of inaction. Create safe ownership and limit choices so they feel confident deciding. Use honest social proof and small commitments to earn the bigger ones. and with one clear next step and a low friction path to follow through. That's how you go from nice call to closed deal. And hey, if you want help putting all of this into practice, or you'd rather skip the learning curve altogether and just get qualified leads delivered straight to your inbox and CRM, I can help with both. I sell vetted leads by niche, and I also run managed lead generation for businesses who want done for you consistency. Just message me or click the link below and include your city and your offer and pick your niche. And I'll send you a few sample leads. We can hop on a call and a simple plan that fits your niche. All right, thanks for watching. And remember, discovery calls aren't about closing hard, they're about understanding deeply. When you master that psychology, every call starts to feel easier and every buyer feels like they're making the right choice and not being sold to.